During the Battle of Tannenberg, Hindenburg, Ludendorff, these are German staff officers, and their staff were standing on a hill and observing a portion of the battlefield. While so engaged, the well-known Colonel Hoffman, who was at the time the G3, came up to a young captain of the general staff and said to him in a quiet tone, "My friend, you seem to have nothing to do. Pay attention. In the village of X, there is a Landsturm battalion. Call up its commander and say to him, a Russian cavalry brigade has made a deep penetration in the direction of village X. The Landsturm battalion is to counterattack and throw back the Russians." On hearing this, the young general staff officer became quite excited and said, "Oh, Colonel, that Landsturm battalion consists only of old men over 45 years old. They cannot defeat a Russian cavalry brigade." The colonel answered, "Merely give him that order quietly, and if the battalion commander refuses to obey, ask him for his name. You will see that he will do it instantly." The young captain gave the order over the telephone, and the battalion commander, terribly excited, answered, "How can I attack a Russian cavalry brigade with my old men? That's impossible." Then the captain said, "I have been directed, if such be the case, to merely ask you for your name." "Oh, me?" came the quick reply. "I did not mean it in that way. Certainly we will attack. I will have my unit forward at once, and in 5 minutes we will be on the march. Your orders will be executed immediately." And they were. The fear of unpleasant consequences resulted in the disappearance of all the commander's fears. With another battalion commander in different circumstances, the effect would probably have been entirely different. Colonel Hoffman had correctly estimated the probable reaction of this battalion commander. Now, this is the same idea, but this is very clear. A really classical example of this art of estimating a situation psychologically was shown in year 1917 by a brigade commander. The general said, "Each of our 3 regimental commanders must be handled differently. Colonel A does not want an order." And as you listen to this, think about the people you know, the people that you work with, and these 3 people exist everywhere. Colonel A does not want an order. He wants to do everything himself, and he always does well. We all know that person. Colonel B executes every order, but has no initiative. We all know that person. Colonel C opposes everything he is told to do and wants to do the contrary. We all know that person. A few days later, the troops confronted a well-entrenched enemy whose position would have to be attacked. The general issued the following individual orders. To Colonel A, the one that wants to do everything himself, "My dear Colonel A, I think we will attack. Your regiment will have to carry the burden of the attack. I have, however, selected you for this reason. The boundaries of your regiment are so-and-so. Attack at X hour. I don't have to tell you anything more." To Colonel C, who opposes everything, he said this: "We have met a very strong enemy. I am afraid we will not be able to attack with the forces at our disposal." "Oh, General, certainly we will attack. Just give me my regiment, the time of the attack, and you will see that we are successful," replied Colonel C. "Go then, we will try it," said the general, giving him the order for the attack, which he had prepared some time previously. To Colonel B, the one that always must have detailed orders and doesn't have initiative, the attack order was merely sent with additional details. All 3 regiments attacked splendidly. This is something that when Leif and I are working with companies, we run into this all the time where you have to modulate and adjust your directives and your interactions. Now, I'm not saying, and this is the dichotomy that makes it tricky. You can't be a different person to different subordinates or senior leadership. You can't be this different person. You have to modulate slightly to make these different impressions on people and give them a different read of you. where if they talk to each other, they would still know you're the same person, and you're not being this two-faced or three-faced or five-faced person. You got to have the consistency. But you do have to modulate your personality and use it in different ways, and use your speech and your words carefully, because they affect different people in different ways. And I've always had that. I mean, even between Leif and his sister platoon commander, who are my two bros, but, you know, I had a little different relationship with both those guys. And that's just the way it was. And it was both relationships were great, and both those guys were incredibly successful and aggressive in accomplishing the mission. Even though I had a little bit different relationship and a little bit different way of dealing with each of them, and they both had their own way of dealing with me. So it was an interesting dynamic of how well that worked. The general, going back to the book, the general knew his subordinates. He knew that each one was different and had to be handled differently in order to achieve results. He had estimated the psychological situation correctly. It is comparatively easy to make a correct estimate if one knows the man concerned, but even then it is often difficult. And this is where it just gets crazy. Because the man doesn't always remain the same. He is no machine. He may react one way today, another way tomorrow. And this is going back to, I think, our first podcast, where I said that people are crazy. People are crazy, and they do crazy things. And that's why you've got to constantly have the open loop with people. You got to give them something, and you got to get that feedback and read and react to what they're saying and how it's changing. Soldiers can be brave one day and afraid the next. Soldiers are not machines, but human beings who must be led in war. Each one of them reacts differently, therefore each must be handled differently. And I know that sounds crazy, and people always think that in the military, you just got all these troopers, and they're just machines that go out and, you know, Leif and I have been quoted saying this many times, because people ask us and say, well, you were in charge of SEALs, and those guys, you know, they do whatever you say. And it's just, no, they weren't machines. They're humans. They have their own free will. They make their own decisions. They decide what their thoughts are going to be. I don't decide what their thoughts are going to be. Yeah. You have to actually lead them.
Yeah.
Furthermore, each one reacts differently at different times and must be handled each time according to his particular reaction. So it's, again, you've got to be open looped and reading and reacting to how people are acting. To sense this and to arrive at a correct psychological solution is part of the art of leadership.
Yes. Sorry, sometimes you'll find the situation where, let's say, a boss, he'll say, hey, you know, what's wrong with you? Your work output isn't, you know, as much as this next guy. You know, this guy, what's wrong with you? This guy follows directions like everything I say, he does it perfectly. What's wrong with you? Kind of thing. So isn't that an example of how a failure in doing that, recognizing what this guy responds to versus what this other guy responds to?
Well, that depends, because some people, if I say, Echo, this guy's doing better than you, some people are super competitive. And they'll go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do better than that person. I'm going to get, you know, but some people will take that with a negative tone and say, you know what, that guy doesn't even see what I do. I'm going to do even less. So it depends. It's always a read. It's always a psychological read on people that makes it challenging.
Yeah. So if you were to think, like how you were saying, if you were to think that there's just this one formula, so you're putting out this one formula as the boss, right? Yeah. And you see 2 out of your team of, 5 guys. 2 of these guys are responding great. They're perfect, you know, but these other 3 guys are kind of operating with varying levels of success. It's an indicator that, all right, you have, you know, a dynamic group of people under you, so, and they respond differently to different things. That's one of those perfect examples.
That's the perfect example. That is it.